the Southern Ohio Farm Show. This is Gigi Neal of OSU Extension in Claremont County, Agricultural and Natural Resources Educator.
I'm James Morris, the Agricultural and Natural Resources and Community Development Educator for the Ohio State University Extension in Brown County.
And I'm Brooke Beam, the Ohio State University Extension Educator for Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Community Development in Highland County. And we will be your hosts for the Southern Ohio Farm Show. In this episode, we have an update on the weather from Aaron Wilson. James Morris will tell us about the markets. We'll have a conversation with Dr. Michael Pera on COVID-19. We'll have gardening with Faye Mahaffey, a meat science demonstration, and finally, something special for Mother's Day. Aaron, tell us about the weather.
Greetings, folks. This is Aaron Wilson, OSU Extension climatologist, here with this week's weather update for Southern Ohio. So this past weekend, we saw some wonderful temperatures across the region in the upper 70s to low 80s, a little bit above average for this time of the year. But temperatures were close to average if we look at the last 7 days overall. And looking at the last 30 days, we've seen temperatures about 2 to 5 degrees below average, so chilly for this time of the year. Precipitation the past 7 days really targeted Southern Ohio. We had a persistent band of showers and thunderstorms move across our counties here, dropping 2 to 4 inches of rainfall Sunday morning across the region. And that's well above our normal weekly amount of precipitation. We've got a much cooler air mass that's settled into the region now. We've got lingering showers this morning that should move out of here. We should have a much better day tomorrow on Thursday with highs in the 60s and some nice sunshine. Unfortunately, we do have another system moving in for Friday. It's going to drop some more rain showers here. And in the wake of this front, we'll have a strong high pressure system set up just to the west of us. If we clear out Friday night and early Saturday morning, we could have some frost and freeze potential. So we'll have to monitor that closely as the week goes on. Looking at our next 7-day forecast for precipitation here, we're looking at about a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch for the week, so slightly below average. Temperatures are likely to remain, again, cooler than average, except for Thursday, a little bit warmer. But again, this is cooler than what we typically see this time of the year in the mid-60s. Overnight Friday into Saturday, we're really going to have to watch those freezing conditions for the opportunity then, again, for frost. Not certainly something that you want to hear as we head into our Mother's Day weekend, but certainly that is a potential this year. Beyond this, looking at the 6 to 10 day outlook, Climate Prediction Center has a very strong probability of cooler than average conditions lingering through about the 14th or 15th of May. We should see highs in the first part of May in the upper 60s to low 70s with normal lows in the upper 40s, and we can expect to be on the cooler side of that traditional climatology. We do see a slightly elevated probability of below average precip, so it could give us an opportunity to dry out a little bit after the saturating rains we had this past weekend. If you'd like some more information, you can always check out Southwest Ohio's weather update with Dr. Wilson's Weather on Facebook. You can follow me at Twitter at Dr. Wilson's Weather. The State Climate Office, climate.osu.edu, has a weekly hydroclimate assessment. And you can always email me if you would like some more information. So till next time, take care. Happy gardening, happy farming, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Aaron. James, what do you have for us today?
So this week, instead of a market update, which I'm sure many of you can agree with me has been pretty negative over the course of the last couple of months, I want to make you aware of a resource that's available to help at least a little bit in offsetting some of those economic losses. This is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan in Advance. It may sound a little familiar. That's because it was available back in April, but they did close the application process and they have reopened it under new eligibility. However, if you did apply for this back in April, they will still process those applications on a first-come, first-served basis, but the new application is available on a limited basis only to provide relief to U.S. agricultural businesses. Now, as you take a look here, you can see at the top, it is available of a loan advance of up to $10,000. That does not mean that you will receive that full amount, but there is an opportunity to apply for at least up to $10,000 that does not have to be repaid. So you can read more about that information here, but if you look at this highlighted blue link here where I underlined the word here, you can see that will take you to the application. And I recommend doing that soon because as you take a look at the application here, there's several pieces of information that you have to input, and some of that may require some time to look up. You can see the gross revenues and costs of goods sold for the 12-month period prior to the date of the disaster, which is January 31st of 2020, is required to be input into this application. So that may take some time for you to look up and get put into the application. And you can see there's other pieces of information we have to input into this application as well. So how I found this resource, you can take a look at the Small Business Administration website, sba.gov. If you hover over funding, it will pull up the COVID-19 tab. You can click on that. It'll take you to the page right here that we're looking at, and you'll see the final button to click on here will be the Economic Injury Disaster Advance Line.
Thank you, James. And we'll now turn it over to Brooke with Dr. Para.
Today we are joined by Dr. Michael Para, Emeritus Professor of Infectious Disease at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Dr. Para, where do we stand today on COVID-19 in Ohio?
Well, Brooke, thank you for asking me to talk a little bit about COVID-19, our current pandemic. Ohio is doing better than many states. In part, it has to do with the governor and the director of health pushing forward a program to limit the spread early on, which they should be commended for. Ohio has so far about 20,000 cases. Of the 20,000, about 4,000 of those individuals have been hospitalized and about 1,000 have died. If we look here at a plot of the cases in Ohio, you see 2 months ago we started with 3 cases and now we're about a little over 20,000 cases. Rose rather rapidly, but since then there's been, and this is cumulative cases, but you see that it's kind of a steady, almost a straight line rise. We're having about 500 or so new cases a day, and it's been relatively steady over the past 3 weeks, I would say, so we have more and more total cases, but the numbers of new cases is not getting bigger and bigger. So that's important, that the numbers are not increasing anymore. And that is kind of shown on this plot here, where we see these are the number of new cases right here. And you see here, if we go back to probably April 23rd to now, so that's been about 2 weeks. It's been pretty steady. There was a big bump here in the middle of April, and that's when they were doing extensive testing in the prisons. But once that's kind of behind us, there's a steady number of cases so far. So epidemic is continuing, but it's not getting worse and worse with at least in the last few weeks.
So as we're getting to the busy season for farmers and they're going to be focused on planting their crops and getting out in the fields, what are the key tips that you need to recommend for these folks to protect themselves and their family members?
Really, I think, it depends on how many people they're working with out in the fields. If they're just driving their combine, they don't need to worry about it. There's nobody around. It's not going to fly through the air, at least not that far, and so, or into an air-conditioned cab. So they're fine. It's really, if they're gonna go to turn in crops and there's a number of people working around, you don't really know, and it's reasonable to wear a mask at that time. I think washing your hands regularly, again, do you have to wash them out on the farm? No, but you certainly probably want to wash all the fertilizer off your hands when you get in the house, or the pesticides. But the virus really, is inactive. Getting it on a solid surface, if you think of it like in spit, in liquid, it hangs around for a while, and that's the kind of thing you need, on a piece of plastic or glass. That's the thing to worry a little bit more. about if you're handling things that other people have handled a lot. But generally, even that, when this is like other viruses, it's got a fatty envelope, and when it dries out, and it's not so infectious. And so I think, you don't know when you pick something up in the store who's handled it, or whether they, have spit on their hands or coughed in their hands and hold on to it. But again, if that sat there overnight, or for hours, it would be much less infectious. And again, it would only be infectious if you picked it up, something that had somebody's cough on it, pick it up, handle it, rub yourself in the eye. When you get out of places like that are handling a lot of things, you should use alcohol or just wash your hands thoroughly. But so again, I think out on the farm, if you're working with a lot of people, then it's reasonable to stay away from 6 feet. I don't know if I can be any more specific. I don't know what, if you're going into a feed store or something, how many people are in there at any one time. But then a mask might be appropriate. But again, I think just keep in mind that if you don't need to be going to, like, the worst thing would be to go to a bar where there's a bunch of people really crowded and you have no idea who's around you. I mean, one of my cousins was in New York City and went to a bar, and 4 days later she had it. And she gave it to her parents and her brother and her boyfriend. And she gave it to them because she didn't know she had it for a few days. And so you just have to be careful in certain environments. And I think, like restaurants too, I am happy to, I'm curious to see how this works out with restaurants with 25% of people in them. Yeah. And if you're at a restaurant, if somebody cooks food, viruses are fairly sensitive. They kind of die at about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And so things that kill other germs that you don't want on your food will kill this virus as well. It's really not in the water either. I think drinking it would be very unusual way to acquire it. Can't say that that's impossible. We haven't studied it, but that would be an unusual way to acquire it.
Thank you very much for your time, and we might check back in with you down the road and see where you think things are headed, and keep us our memory refreshed on what our best tips are that we can implement.
Okay.
Thank you, Brooke. Next up is Faye Mahaffey, a Brown County Master Gardener volunteer.
Hi, I'm Faye Mahaffey. I'm a Brown County Master Gardener volunteer, and I'm in my garden today, and I'm going to give you a quick tip on how to keep some pests out of your garden. Sorry for the birds. This is a row cover. Why do I need a row cover? A row cover is a good way to protect plants from pests, from wind, and from excessive sun. I put this row cover up for the first time this year because last year I had lots of cabbage worms. So as you can see, this is very lightweight fabric. It lets the water in, it lets air in, and it lets sun in. I've got the ends anchored with large earth staples, which is important. And we attached it to the bed in sort of a different way. We drilled holes and we bent the wires here and we stuck them in the wood, and then we put the cloth over. Okay, so sometimes people weight the cloth with soil or with rocks, but I really didn't want to do that. So what we did instead was we used PVC pipe, and we wound the fabric around that, and we put in a screw, and we made that so that it won't move. On the other side, I wanted a way to check my plants because, of course, it's really important that you check on what's going on underneath this fabric. So we came up with an idea. We wrapped the cloth around the PVC pipe. Then we put a screw in and we used a clamp. Now, I'm not going to show you how easy it is to take that clamp off because it takes both my hands to do that. So, what's underneath here? Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, and kale. All things that were decimated last year in my raised beds. I don't like to use 7 because I worry about the pollinators, the bees. So this is a really efficient way to keep the insects out. Now, if I was using this row cover and I had cucumbers or zucchini underneath, when those start to flower, I would have to pull up and roll over the fabric so that the pollinators can do their magic, and at night put it back down. I have an experiment going on over on the other side of the garden. The picket fence is there to keep squirrels from digging, but I have some kohlrabi over there that I have not protected with a row cover, and I'm going to see how that works. So, decide what you'd like to do, but perhaps you'd like to try a row cover to protect your plants, because you know when you see those little white butterflies flying around and you think they're really pretty, what they're really doing is laying eggs under the leaves, and the cabbage worms come out to eat. So this is Faye Mahaffey from Brown County Master Gardener Volunteers. Keep gardening. It hasn't been canceled.
Last week, we mentioned that we were going to discuss different practices on how to prepare locally sourced food. So for this week, I'm going to show you how I prepare barbecued ribs in the smoker. While there's many different ways to prepare pork, this is just one of many ways that you can add a little bit of a different flavor to what you're preparing. As always, when you're cooking meat, use a meat thermometer to make sure that you are cooking your meat to the correct internal temperature. So if you don't have a meat thermometer, they're relatively inexpensive, and I'm sure that you can buy them at the grocery store or even at a home improvement store where you might get some of your grilling supplies. So just make sure you're getting things to the correct temperature and enjoy your locally sourced food.
As Faye mentioned, gardening is not canceled. We can still get outside and enjoy the weather and do some work in our flower beds and gardens. There's something else that's not canceled this year, and that's Mother's Day. Even though things may be a little different and a little unusual, that doesn't mean that we have forgot about the importance of this day. And here at OSU Extension, our main goal is to educate folks statewide on a wide variety of topics. And those topics can range from agricultural and natural resources to family consumer sciences and even community development and youth development. But no matter what the topic may be, no matter whether it's food, farming, or family, we're outperformed every single year by one particular group, and that's our mothers. That's because no matter how many fact sheets and no matter how many research reports we publish, there is nothing that can compare to the life advice, education, and leadership that our mothers provide to us. Whether it be life advice to help us in the future or a little bit of advice on things we probably shouldn't have done, which I've had plenty of, by the way, and I'm sure you have too. Our mothers do a lot for us, and they do more for us than we could ever thank them for without us ever asking for it. So here today, we've put together a very small collection and representation of some of the great mothers in our area. And hopefully, as you look at some of these pictures, you can tell just how much our mothers do for us, whether it be from working on the farm to putting food on the table, from providing leadership, being the best babysitters we could ask for, and of course, our best friends since day one. From OSU Extension, we send out a great big thank you to all of the mothers out there, and we hope you have a fantastic Mother's Day weekend.
Thank you, everyone, for enjoying our show. We hope you have a blessed Mother's Day weekend, and we look forward to you joining us next week on May the 13th at 10 a.m., where Tony and I will be our special guest talking about the pesticide recycling program, and Christine Gelly will be joining us from Noble County. Have a good weekend.